To draw on music terminology, this book emerged from an intro and a coda. Its genesis was the fall of 1978, when I arrived in Greenwich Village to start my freshman year at New York University. Growing up in northern New Jersey, in a house with a view of the Manhattan skyline some 25 miles away, it was impossible not to think about the city. Bus rides into New York, to attend a concert at Radio City Music Hall or Carnegie Hall, or see a movie that hadn't made it to the suburbs, or hunt down the plethora of used record stores, only reinforced its allure. Even as we read about the city's downward economic spiral, it still felt like the place to be, alive with arts and thrills. Settling into my college dorm, on East 10th Street and Broadway, down the block from the renovated Hotel Albert, a one-time way station for musicians, I sensed that the heyday of the village music world had peaked. The giants from the previous decade were rarely, if ever, listed in the Village Voice club ads, and some had even passed away. But starting on my first night in the city, which included a pilgrimage to the area's leading and most eclectic venue, the Bottom Line, music clearly remained woven into the fabric of the neighborhood, even if the material was frayed. Other landmark clubs I'd heard about, like Folk City and the Village Vanguard, were still open for business and presenting acts whose names were familiar to me. One could easily spend infinite hours, as I did, flipping through bins of used and rare vinyl in the seemingly countless record stores south of 14th Street. There I found copies of out-of-print LPs by Phil Ochs, Tim Hardin, The Blues Project, and other village-connected legends I'd read about but rarely heard, even on the FM radio of the time. My roommates and I could walk along Bleecker Street and hear music drifting out of the Bitter End, the Village Gates, or the recently opened Kenny's Castaways. Each week's edition of The Voice devoted page after page to ads for those and other venues. NYU offered classes in folk music and guitar, both of which I took. The newsstands that seemed to inhabit every street corner had racks stuffed with magazines devoted entirely to music, even to specific genres. In the fall of 1981, as part of my journalism degree, I enrolled in a class on magazine writing. Pitching my professor on a story about an apparent folk revival in the village, I found myself embedded in the scene as much as an outsider could have been. That season, a new club, Speakeasy, had opened in the back of a falafel restaurant on MacDougall Street. Drifting between that space and the long-standing Bob Dylan-associated Folk City around the corner, I heard what amounted to the next generation of songwriters by way of early performances by Sean Colvin, Suzanne Vega, and others. To my shock and awe, I found myself standing next to or even talking with new and vintage musicians and hearing tales of Ochs, Hardin, Odetta, and of course Dylan, still its most famous graduate. At Folk City or Speakeasy, I would glance at the bar and see Dave Van Ronk, Donnie Kalb, or a relative newcomer like Steve Forbert hanging out there. Sometimes I summoned up a degree of courage to speak with one of them, but I was just as often intimidated. I observed a few sessions of a songwriter's workshop, the Songwriters Exchange, at the Cornelia Street Cafe, and caught a weekend afternoon set at the Village Vanguard. 60s legends like Tom Paxton and Eric Anderson would periodically return to town and play one of those clubs, and I was fortunate to catch some of those as well.